Greetings, fellow travelers through the corridors of time. Tonight, we embark on a journey into the sands of ancient Egypt, not to the grand pyramids, but to a lesser-known yet profoundly significant site, Abusir el-Meleq. Here, the echoes of millennia whisper tales of life, death, and the very essence of Egyptian identity. Prepare to immerse yourselves in a narrative woven from forgotten tombs, pioneering archaeological finds, and the groundbreaking scientific revelations that challenge what we thought we knew. Settle in, find your focus, or let these ancient voices guide you to a restful slumber. And as always, if you find solace and knowledge in these stories, a gentle tap on that like button, a comment, or sharing this journey with another history enthusiast would mean the world. Let us begin. Welcome, history enthusiasts, to Vibing History. Settle in, perhaps with a warm drink as we journey back through time, sifting through the sands of forgotten millennia. Tonight, our excavation takes us to a place that, despite its immense historical weight, remains largely unknown to many. Abusir el-Meleq. Imagine, if you will, the bustling agricultural heartland of ancient Egypt, along the verdant banks of the Nile, 114 kilometers south of Cairo. Nestled within what is now the Beni Suef Governorate, lies this unassuming town. But beneath its modern veneer, and stretching far beyond, is a necropolis, a city of the dead that holds within its silent embrace stories spanning nearly 4,000 years. Abusir el-Meleq, or Abusir el-Meleq as it's sometimes known, was, for a significant stretch of the first millennium BCE, the primary burial ground for the powerful city of Herakleopolis. Now, why does this particular necropolis matter so profoundly? Beyond the sheer scale of its ancient occupation, dating from at least 3250 BCE right up to about 700 CE, Abusir el-Meleq has recently taken center stage in some of the most fascinating and, at times, contentious scientific debates about ancient Egyptian ancestry. It was here, from the mummified remains of 151 individuals, that a groundbreaking 2017 DNA study sought to unlock the genetic secrets of the past, comparing the mitochondrial DNA of these ancient Egyptians with their modern descendants. We'll delve into the implications of that study a little later, but for now, let's paint a broader picture of this extraordinary site. Abusir el-Meleq was far more than just a place to bury the dead. It was a place of vibrant spiritual activity, intimately connected to the powerful cult of Osiris, the god of the afterlife, rebirth, and the underworld. Within its extensive necropolis, many priests and singers dedicated to Herakleopolis, whose principal cult center lay just 20 kilometers away in Herakleopolis Magna, found their final rest. Think of the echoes of ancient hymns and the rituals performed in their honor, carried on the desert winds for centuries. By the 3rd century BCE, this region was a thriving hub. Abusir el-Meleq formed part of the northern Herakleopolites nome, an administrative division of ancient Egypt. It played a crucial role in the agricultural network, connecting the rich Fayum oasis and the Memphite provinces. Picture the flow of goods, cattle being bred, wheat being transported, the sweet scent of honey from extensive beekeeping operations filling the air. This was a dynamic economic landscape, where life and trade flourished alongside the veneration of the deceased. As the Roman period dawned, in the early centuries of our Common Era, Abusir el-Meleq's significance continued to evolve. It may even have emerged as its own distinct district. The Necropolis itself, strategically located north of the Pharaohs entrance, became a sprawling canvas of burial practices, displaying an astonishing chronological depth. From the pre-dynastic period, long before the pharaohs ruled a unified Egypt, right through to the Islamic period, a continuous thread of funerary traditions unfolded here. What's particularly striking is a significant section of the necropolis dedicated to a Roman-era cemetery, dating from the 1st to 2nd centuries CE. This section is truly unique, unlike anything documented elsewhere in Egypt. It speaks to a fascinating cultural intermingling, a tapestry woven from different threads. During the Roman period, it was common for non-Egyptian veterans of the Roman army, upon completing their service, to settle in areas like Pharaohs. They often intermarried with the local communities, bringing with them their own traditions and influences. And Abusir el-Meleq provides tangible evidence of this melting pot. We find indications of individuals bearing Greek, Hebrew, or Latin names, buried alongside those with ancient Egyptian names. The archaeological record even reveals Greek portraiture being incorporated into Egyptian funerary art, and Greek statuary being adapted to suit local burial practices. Imagine a Roman soldier, having served his time, choosing to be laid to rest in the Egyptian style, perhaps with a traditional Egyptian amulet alongside a Roman coin. It's a powerful testament to the fluidity of culture and identity in this ancient world. Now, how did we come to know so much about this extraordinary site? Much of our initial understanding stems from the tireless work of early archaeologists. The German archaeologist Otto Rubinsohn was instrumental in bringing Abusir el-Meleq to light. Between 1902 and 1905, he led 4 excavation campaigns here. Rubinsohn's primary mission, working for the Egyptian Museum of Berlin, was to unearth papyri, those precious ancient documents that preserve so much of history's voice. Yet, in Abusir el-Meleq, he discovered something far more expansive than just texts. His excavations uncovered complete grave furnishings, more than 345 graves, containing over 700 burials. Think of the meticulous effort involved in painstakingly uncovering each layer, each artifact, each human story. Despite the wealth of material findings, a curious fact remains. Much of what Rubinsohn discovered is largely unpublished to this day. We know that around 400 individual objects ended up in Berlin, with another 200 distributed among various collections across the then German Empire. These findings span an incredible timeline, from the earliest Naqada period, dating back to 4000–3000 BCE, right through to the Greek, Roman, and even the period of Arab rule in 641 CE. The bulk of the material, however, falls within the 3rd intermediate period to the Greco-Roman era, a time of immense change and transition in Egyptian history. Among Rubinsohn's most notable discoveries was the burial of a young girl named Tadja. This particular grave stood out for its remarkable state of preservation and completeness, a rare find. Nearly 60 individual objects were recovered from her burial alone. Beyond the inner and outer coffins, her grave contained delicate finger rings, protective amulets, even musical instruments that once might have entertained her in life. Headrests, faience vessels, those beautiful glazed ceramic objects, and small female and male sculptures, all dating from the 25th and 26th dynasties, were carefully placed alongside her for her journey to the afterlife. It offers a poignant glimpse into the hopes and beliefs surrounding childhood and death in ancient Egypt. Another significant discovery was the coffin of a man named Psammtis, found in 1904. It wasn't just Psammtis. Alongside him were 4 other coffins, belonging to his family members. Rubinsohn, in his meticulous diary, numbered them 1 through 5. Psammtis' wife Ibit in coffin 1, his daughter's son Horweja in coffin 2, Psammtis himself in coffin 3, his daughter Kh Nemet in coffin 4, and his son Horweja in coffin 5. Imagine the scene: an entire family laid to rest together, their lives intertwined in this sacred space. At the head of Psammtis' tomb, 2 crucial funerary objects were discovered: an empty canopic chest, likely intended to hold his internal organs, topped with a falcon statuette adorned with 2 feathers, a symbol of protection and divinity, and a wooden figure of Ta-Sakar Osiris, a composite deity representing creation, the underworld, and rebirth. The sarcophagi, for the most part, were fashioned from rounded limestone and contained wooden inner coffins, a common practice during the Ptolemaic period. The exception was the 4th coffin, that of his daughter Kh Nemet, which was a wooden coffin only. Each detail, each artifact, whispers stories of identity, family, and belief. Following Rubinsohn's initial groundbreaking work, the German Oriental Society organized another expedition between 1905 and 1906, this time led by the distinguished Egyptologist Georg Merler. Merler's team focused their efforts on the southern part of the cemetery, where they uncovered approximately 150 more graves. Interestingly, their excavation squares weren't arranged systematically. Instead, each new area they dug was simply assigned the next sequential number in their plan sketches, reflecting the organic, exploratory nature of early archaeological work. Some of these graves were quite simple: shallow, round pits containing few or no funerary goods. These simpler burials, primarily for children, hint at varying social strata and perhaps the harsh realities of ancient childhood mortality. But Merler's excavations revealed even more about the diverse population that called Abusir el-Meleq home. There was clear evidence of Nubians being buried according to their own traditions, distinct from Egyptian practices. Nubian products, such as black-rimmed clay bowls and alabaster vanity panels, were found in these graves, providing further proof of the vibrant cultural exchange and presence of different ethnic groups within ancient Egypt. These are not merely bones and artifacts. These are the tangible remains of lives lived, beliefs held, and cultures intertwined, all preserved beneath the silent sands of Abusir el-Meleq. The sheer volume of burials, the incredible chronological span, and the diversity of cultural practices unearthed at Abusir el-Meleq made it an ideal site for deeper scientific investigation in the modern era. And this brings us back to that pivotal ** 2017 DNA study **, a research endeavor that sent ripples through the fields of Egyptology and genetics. The study, published by Schuenemann et al., took DNA samples from 151 Egyptian mummies recovered from Abusir el-Meleq. These mummies span significant periods: the late New Kingdom, the Ptolemaic era, and the Roman period. Imagine the painstaking work of extracting ancient DNA, a delicate and often challenging process. From these samples, they successfully obtained complete mitochondrial DNA, or mtDNA, sequences from 90 individuals, and even full genome-wide data from 3 ancient Egyptian individuals. This ancient genetic information was then compared with other ancient and modern datasets, including 135 modern Egyptian samples. What did they discover? The ancient Egyptian individuals in their dataset shared remarkably similar mtDNA haplogroup profiles. These haplogroups, essentially genetic lineages, clustered together, strongly suggesting a high degree of genetic continuity across that 300-year span. In simpler terms, the study indicated that the ancient population of Abusir el-Meleq over many centuries largely maintained its genetic profile. Modern Egyptians, too, shared this core mtDNA haplogroup profile, but with a crucial difference. They carried an additional 8% more sub-Saharan African component. The study identified a wide range of mtDNA haplogroups, including those commonly found in the Near East, Europe, and Africa. When it came to Y-DNA, which traces paternal lineage, the 3 ancient individuals for whom genome-wide data was available provided further insights. 2 were assigned to the West Asian haplogroup J, and 1 to haplogroup E1b1b1. Both of these haplogroups are found in modern Egyptians and are also common among Afroasiatic speakers across North Africa, Eastern Africa, and the Middle East. However, the researchers were quick to add a note of caution, a crucial point for understanding the limitations of any scientific study. They emphasized that the ancient Egyptian specimens they examined might not be representative of all ancient Egyptians, given that they were all from a single archaeological site in the northern part of Egypt. This is a vital caveat. You can't necessarily generalize findings from one localized area to an entire vast and diverse civilization. Despite this, the analyses revealed higher genetic affinities with Near Eastern and European populations in the ancient samples when compared to modern Egyptians. This, the researchers suggested, was likely due to that 8% increase in the sub-Saharan African component seen in the modern population. Interestingly, when they compared the Abusir el-Meleq samples from the Roman period with a contemporary population under Roman rule in Anatolia, they didn't find a closer relationship. The study concluded that genetic continuity between ancient and modern Egyptians could not be ruled out, despite this more recent influx of sub-Saharan African ancestry. However, they found no evidence to support genetic continuity with modern Ethiopians based on their data. The absolute estimates of sub-Saharan African ancestry in those 3 ancient Egyptian individuals ranged from 6 to 15%. In contrast, the 135 modern Egyptian samples showed a range of 14 to 21% sub-Saharan African ancestry. This clearly indicates an approximate 8% increase in this African component. The age of the ancient samples led the researchers to suggest that this 8% increase predominantly occurred within the last 2,000 years. The modern Egyptian samples themselves came from 2 sources, 100 from a study by Pagani et al., and 35 from the El Hayes Western Desert Oasis, a population already known to have a relatively high sub-Saharan African component, over 11% higher than the other modern Egyptian samples. Verena Schuenemann and her co-authors proposed that their data suggested a high level of genetic interaction with the Near East dating back to ancient times, perhaps even to prehistoric Egypt, even though their oldest mummies were from the New Kingdom. They wrote, and I quote, "Our data seem to indicate close admixture and affinity at a much earlier date, which is unsurprising given the long and complex connections between Egypt and the Middle East. These connections date back to prehistory and occurred at a variety of scales, including overland and maritime commerce, diplomacy, immigration, invasion, and deportation. It paints a picture of ancient Egypt not as an isolated land, but as a crossroads of civilizations, constantly interacting and exchanging goods, ideas, and, of course, genetic material. However, as is often the case with groundbreaking scientific studies, the 2017 DNA study from Abusir el-Meleq generated considerable academic discussion, and yes, some strong criticisms from scholars across various disciplines. This is a healthy part of the scientific process, where findings are rigorously tested and alternative explanations explored. For instance, Gourdin et al. Took issue with the study's methodology. They specifically challenged the claim that the observed increase in the sub-Saharan component in modern Egyptian samples was primarily due to the trans-Saharan slave trade. They argued that these sub-Saharan genetic affinities might instead be attributed to early settlers, and that the relevant sub-Saharan genetic markers didn't necessarily align with the geography of known trade routes. This suggests a much deeper, more ancient historical connection rather than a more recent one. In 2022, biological anthropologist S.O.Y. Cater raised several concerns, highlighting what he perceived as problems with the study's approaches and conclusions. He pointed to overgeneralizations and a failure to consider alternative explanations. Cater specifically questioned the use of West African comparative samples as a proxy group and cautioned against broad generalizations about the entirety of geographical Egypt and its population origins based on samples from a single site. He also pointed out that the authors seem to draw inferences about migrations primarily based on their Bayesian statistical approach, rather than integrating other forms of data into their explanations of population history. Archaeologist Danielle Candelora, also in 2022, highlighted several limitations in the 2017 study. She noted new untested sampling methods, small sample size, and problematic comparative data. Candelora emphasized that the most significant findings of the study, particularly the genome-wide analyses, were based on only 3 mummies, which is a very small number to draw broad conclusions from. More recently, in 2023, Stiebling and Helft acknowledged that, while the 2017 study was the largest of its kind on ancient Egyptians, its findings were still derived from a limited sample of mummies from just one site in Middle Egypt, dating to the New Kingdom and later periods. They rightly pointed out that this study couldn't truly represent earlier populations or Egyptians from Upper Egypt, who were geographically closer to sub-Saharan populations and likely had different genetic histories. And in 2023, Christopher Ayret, a renowned historian of Africa, argued that the study's conclusions were based on insufficiently small sample sizes and that the authors had a biased interpretation of the genetic data. Ayret also criticized the study for what he saw as an assertion that there was no sub-Saharan component in the ancient Egyptian population. He cited other genetic evidence that had identified the Horn of Africa as a source for a significant genetic marker, the M35/215 Y chromosome lineage, which had moved north from that region into Egypt and the Levant, suggesting an older and more profound connection to African populations than the study initially implied. These criticisms are not meant to diminish the immense scientific achievement of extracting and analyzing ancient DNA, which is a truly remarkable feat. Rather, they highlight the complexity of historical and genetic interpretation and the ongoing dialogue required to fully understand the intricate tapestry of human migration and ancestry. Abusir el-Meleq, this once-lost necropolis, has become a silent witness, not just to the lives of the ancient Egyptians, but also to the dynamic and evolving nature of scientific inquiry itself. It reminds us that history is never truly settled, always open to new discoveries, new interpretations, and new questions. As the embers of this segment glow, I invite you to reflect on Abusir el-Meleq, a place that for millennia was a sacred resting ground, a place where people lived, farmed, worshipped, and buried their dead. A place that now, through the lens of modern science, is helping us to understand not just who the ancient Egyptians were, but also how their story connects to our own, in ways both profound and continuously debated. Join me again as we delve deeper into the silent keepers of history, unearthing more from the tombs and treasures of ancient Egypt. Until then, keep vibing with history. Welcome back, my friends, to Vibing History. Settle in, perhaps with a warm drink, as we continue our journey into the quiet, sandy embrace of Abusir el-Meleq. Last time, we touched upon its geographical roots, its ancient name, and its significance as a necropolis, a city of the dead, whispering secrets across millennia. Tonight, we delve deeper, past the mere location, into the very earth that holds these silent keepers of history, the tombs and treasures themselves. Imagine, if you will, the bustling world of ancient Egypt, a vibrant tapestry of life and ritual. Now, picture that same world as it slowly, inexorably, gives way to silence. This is the transformation that occurred at Abusir el-Meleq, a place that, for at least 950 years from approximately 3250 BCE until about 700 CE was a dynamic stage for human existence, and ultimately for human passing. It wasn't merely a burial ground, it was a testament to enduring faith, a landscape shaped by belief in the afterlife. At the heart of Abusir el-Meleq's spiritual life was an active cult dedicated to Osiris, the revered god of the underworld, rebirth, and fertility. It's a truly profound thought, isn't it? A place dedicated entirely to the journey beyond, to ensuring the departed found their way through the Jewet, the Egyptian underworld. And within this sacred space, many individuals of particular significance found their eternal rest. Singers and priests of Herakleopolis, whose principal cult center resided in the grand city of Herakleopolis Magna, merely 20 kilometers away. These were not just any people. These were individuals deeply entwined with the spiritual fabric of their society, their voices perhaps once echoing through temple halls, now hushed forever within these ancient tombs. By the 3rd century BCE, the area around Abusir el-Meleq was firmly integrated into the Herakleopolites' nome, a regional administrative division. Its lifeblood, like so much of ancient Egypt, was agriculture. Think of the fertile lands, nourished by the Nile, stretching out under the relentless sun. Abusir el-Meleq was a vital node in this agricultural network, connected to the bountiful Fayum and the Memphite provinces. We see evidence of thriving economic activities here: cattle breeding, the transport of wheat, and even beekeeping. Imagine the golden fields of wheat, the buzzing of industrious bees, the lowing of cattle, all integral to the daily rhythm of life, even as the necropolis stood as a constant reminder of life's fleeting nature. Then, as the Roman period dawned, the site perhaps even evolved into its own distinct district, a testament to its growing importance and population. The necropolis itself, positioned strategically north of the Fayum entrance, is a sprawling landscape of discovery. Within its sandy confines, archaeologists have unearthed a remarkable array of tombs, their contents spanning an incredible timeline from the pre-dynastic period, predating the very first pharaohs, right through to the Islamic period. It's a layered history, each excavation revealing another chapter, another generation's story. But perhaps one of the most intriguing aspects of Abusir el-Meleq's necropolis is a significant section dating from the 1st to 2nd century CE. This is a Roman era cemetery, unique in its characteristics and remarkably not documented anywhere else in Egypt. What does this tell us? It speaks of cultural blending, of new populations arriving and making Egypt their home. During the Roman period, it wasn't uncommon for non-Egyptian veterans of the Roman army to settle in the fertile Fayum area after their service. They didn't just live there. They intermarried, woven themselves into the fabric of the existing communities. And the evidence of this multicultural melting pot is abundant within the necropolis itself. We find records of individuals bearing Greek, Hebrew, or Latin names. We see Greek portraiture, once adorning Roman homes, adapted to suit the solemn rituals of Egyptian burial practices, blending artistic traditions in a fascinating fusion. It's a powerful reminder that ancient Egypt, for all its distinctiveness, was never truly isolated. It was a crossroads of civilizations, a recipient and contributor to a vast global exchange. Now, let's turn our attention to the individuals who first brought many of these hidden stories to light. Our journey begins with Otto Rubinsohn, a German archaeologist who, at the turn of the 20th century, stumbled upon this silent city of the dead. Between 1902 and 1905, Rubinsohn spearheaded 4 excavation campaigns in the area. His primary objective, initially, was to unearth papyri for the Egyptian Museum of Berlin. Yet, as so often happens in archaeology, the earth offered up more than expected. His work at Abusir el-Meleq unveiled not just scattered fragments, but complete grave furnishings and a staggering number of burials, over 345 graves containing more than 700 individual interments. Imagine the meticulous work, the patient sifting of sand, the careful documentation of each find. Despite the immense material wealth uncovered, a curious fact remains. Many of these findings are, to this day, largely unpublished. 400 individual objects found their way to Berlin, while another 200 were dispersed among various collections across the then German Empire. It leaves one wondering about the untold stories still locked away in museum storerooms, waiting for a new generation of scholars to bring them to light. The sheer chronological span of Rubensohn's findings is breathtaking. The oldest graves discovered date back to the Naqada period, spanning from 4000 to 3000 BCE, a time so ancient it predates the unification of Egypt under a single pharaoh. The later burials extended into the Greek and Roman periods, and even into the time of Arab rule, beginning in 641 CE. However, it's the objects from the Third Intermediate Period to the Greco-Roman period that form the bulk of the material findings, providing a rich tapestry of life and death from these later, yet still profoundly ancient, eras. Among Rubensohn's many discoveries, one particular burial stands out for its exceptional preservation and completeness: the grave of a young girl named Tadja. In a field where so many graves are disturbed or looted, Tadja's resting place offered a pristine window into the past. Nearly 60 individual objects were found within her tomb alone. Beyond the inner and outer coffins, there were delicate finger rings, protective amulets perhaps once clutched in her small hands, and even musical instruments, hinting at a life filled with melody. Headrests, faience vessels, and small female and male sculptures, dating from the 25th to 26th dynasties, paint a vivid picture of the world she inhabited and the grave goods intended to accompany her on her journey. It's a poignant image, this young girl, surrounded by the echoes of her life, preserved for thousands of years. Another significant discovery in 1904 was the coffin of a man named Psammtis, found alongside 4 other coffins belonging to his family members. Rubensohn meticulously numbered them in his diary: Psammtis's wife, Ibit, in coffin 1, his daughter's son, Horwedja, in coffin 2, Psammtis himself in coffin 3, his daughter, Kh Nemet, in coffin 4, and his son, also named Horwedja, in coffin 5. Imagine the quiet reverence as these family members were laid to rest, side by side, their final earthly proximity preserved in the archaeological record. At the head of Psammtis's tomb, 2 poignant funerary objects were discovered: an empty canopic chest, likely once holding his preserved organs, adorned with a falcon statuette with 2 feathers, a symbol of the god Horus and royalty, and a wooden figure of Ta-Sakar Osiris, a syncretic deity associated with creation, the underworld, and resurrection. The sarcophagi themselves were made of rounded limestone, containing wooden coffins, a common practice during the Ptolemaic period. The 4th coffin, belonging to his daughter Kh Nemet, was unique in being solely a wooden coffin. Each detail, each material choice, speaks volumes about the beliefs and practices of the time, about the careful preparations made for the eternal journey. Our exploration of Abusir el-Meleq's hidden depths continues with another key figure, Georg Merler, an Egyptologist who led an expedition organized by the German Oriental Society in 1905 and 1906. Merler's excavations focused on the southern part of the cemetery, uncovering approximately 150 graves. Unlike Rubensohn's more systematic approach, Merler's excavation squares were not always arranged with strict regularity. Rather, each newly dug square would simply receive the next number in the plan sketches. This perhaps speaks to the challenging nature of archaeological work, often driven by the immediate discoveries in the sand. Among Merler's findings were numerous shallow, round pits, graves with little to no funerary goods, predominantly used for children. These simple burials offer a stark contrast to the more elaborate tombs, reminding us that not all journeys to the afterlife were marked by grand processions and rich treasures. And then, a truly fascinating detail emerged: evidence of Nubians buried according to their own traditions, alongside distinctly Nubian products. Black-rimmed clay bowls and an alabaster vanity panel, unequivocally Nubian in origin, tell a powerful story of cultural exchange and migration. They indicate that Abusir el-Meleq was not just a melting pot for Greeks and Romans, but also for people from the south, from the ancient kingdom of Nubia, further enriching the multicultural tapestry of this ancient site. The silent keepers of Abusir el-Meleq, as we've come to know them, are not merely skeletons and artifacts. They are the echoes of lives lived, beliefs held, and cultures intertwined. They are the voices of Tadja, Samtis, and the nameless children, speaking to us across the millennia through the meticulous work of those who carefully, patiently brought their stories back to the light. These individuals, whether pharaohs or peasants, priests or soldiers, all shared a common hope: to transcend the veil of death and find eternal peace. And within the silent, sandy embrace of Abusir el-Meleq, their hope lives on, waiting for us to listen. Join me next time as we unravel even more secrets from this extraordinary site, delving into the groundbreaking 2017 DNA study that attempted to unlock the genetic heritage of these ancient Egyptians, and exploring the fascinating and sometimes controversial conclusions it drew about their ancestry. Until then, keep vibing with history. Welcome back, my friends. Pull up a chair, dim the lights, and let the gentle hum of history carry you into the heart of ancient mysteries. In our last segment, we peered into the silent world of Abusir el-Meleq's Necropolis, uncovering the rich tapestry of its burials and the painstaking work of archaeologists like Otto Rubinsohn and Georg Merler. We saw the delicate artifacts, the varied burial practices, and the poignant stories etched into the very earth. But what if the earth could speak a different language? What if the remains of these ancient Egyptians could whisper not just tales of their lives, but of their very origins? Tonight, we're going to delve into one of the most intriguing and, at times, contentious aspects of our understanding of ancient Egypt: the story told by their DNA. We're talking about the echoes in the genes, what ancient Egyptian DNA reveals, and perhaps more importantly, what it hides about their ancestry. For centuries, the question of who the ancient Egyptians really were, where they came from, and how they relate to the people living in Egypt today, has been a topic of immense fascination and heated debate. Was ancient Egypt a purely African civilization? Were they descendants of people from the Near East? Or was it a complex melting pot, drawing from various corners of the ancient world? These are not just academic questions. They touch upon identity, heritage, and the very narrative of human civilization. For a long time, such questions could only be approached through archaeological evidence, linguistic analysis, and interpretations of art and inscriptions. But with the advent of genetic science, a new, powerful tool emerged: DNA analysis. And in 2017, a groundbreaking study, led by a team including Verena Schuenemann, brought this tool to bear on the mummified remains from our very own Abusir el-Meleq. Imagine, if you will, the delicate work involved. Extracting viable DNA from samples that are thousands of years old is no small feat. The heat, the humidity, the ravages of time all work against the preservation of these microscopic blueprints of life. Yet, the researchers successfully extracted DNA from an astonishing 151 Egyptian mummies, all recovered from Abusir el-Meleq in Middle Egypt. These samples spanned an impressive time frame, from the late New Kingdom through the Ptolemaic period and into the Roman era, covering over 300 years of Egyptian history. The sheer number of samples, especially for ancient DNA studies, was remarkable. From these, they managed to obtain complete mitochondrial DNA sequences from 90 individuals, and even more significantly, genome-wide data from 3 ancient Egyptian individuals. This was a monumental step forward, offering an unprecedented glimpse into the genetic makeup of these long-gone people. The research aimed to compare these ancient genetic profiles with other ancient and modern datasets, including 135 modern Egyptian samples. The findings, as you might expect, were both revealing and sparked considerable discussion. What they discovered was a remarkable degree of genetic continuity among the ancient Egyptian individuals in their own dataset. Their mitochondrial DNA haplogroup profiles, these deep ancestral markers passed down through the maternal line, were highly similar and clustered together, suggesting a stable genetic landscape across that 300-year span. Now, when they compared these ancient profiles to modern Egyptians, they found that while modern Egyptians shared this general mtDNA haplogroup profile, they also carried an additional 8% more of what geneticists categorize as an African component. This immediately raised questions. When did this increase occur, and what might have caused it? A wide array of mtDNA haplogroups were identified in the ancient samples, including common clades like J, U, H, HV, M, R0, R2, K, T, L, I, N, X, and W. For the 3 ancient individuals from whom genome-wide data was retrieved, the Y-DNA passed down through the paternal line was also analyzed. 2 were assigned to the West Asian haplogroup J, and 1 to haplogroup E1b1b1. Both of these haplogroups are found in modern Egyptians and are also common among Afro-Asiatic speakers across Northern Africa, Eastern Africa, and the Middle East. However, the researchers themselves were cautious, and rightly so. They emphasized that the ancient Egyptian specimens they examined were all from a single archaeological site in the northern part of Egypt . This is a crucial point, as the genetic makeup of people from, say, Upper Egypt, closer to Nubia and the African interior, might have been different. Therefore, these results might not be representative of all ancient Egyptians across the vast stretches of their empire. Despite this important caveat, the analyses did reveal higher genetic affinities between the ancient Egyptians from Abusir el-Meleq and populations from the Near East and Europe, particularly when compared to modern Egyptians. This, the study suggested, was likely due to that 8% increase in the African component observed in modern Egyptians. The absolute estimates of sub-Saharan African ancestry in the three ancient individuals ranged from 6 to 15%, while in the modern Egyptian samples, it ranged from 14 to 21%. This 8% increase, the study posited, occurred predominantly within the last 2,000 years. The authors, Verena Schuenemann and her team, suggested a high level of genetic interaction with the Near East dating back to ancient times, perhaps even to prehistoric Egypt. They wrote, and I quote, "Our data seem to indicate close admixture and affinity at a much earlier date, which is unsurprising given the long and complex connections between Egypt and the Middle East. These connections date back to prehistory and occurred at a variety of scales, including overland and maritime commerce, diplomacy, immigration, invasion, and deportation. This certainly painted a fascinating picture. Ancient Egypt, at least from the perspective of Abusir el-Meleq, appearing to have closer genetic ties to its northeastern neighbors than perhaps previously emphasized, with a more recent influx of sub-Saharan African ancestry into the modern population. But as with any groundbreaking scientific study, particularly one touching on such sensitive and historically charged topics, the 2017 DNA study from Abusir el-Meleq did not go uncriticized. Academic responses quickly emerged from scholars across various related disciplines, offering multidisciplinary perspectives on the conclusions. One significant criticism came from Gourdin and colleagues, who specifically challenged the claim that the increase in the sub-Saharan component in modern Egyptian samples was primarily a result of the trans-Saharan slave trade. They argued that these sub-Saharan genetic affinities might instead be attributed to early settlers, and that the relevant sub-Saharan genetic markers didn't necessarily align with the geography of known trade routes. This highlights a crucial point. Genetic data can tell us what happened, but interpreting the why and how often requires careful consideration of historical context and other lines of evidence. In 2022, biological anthropologist S.O.Y. Keita weighed in, pointing out several issues with the study's approaches and conclusions. He raised concerns about overgeneralizations and a failure to consider alternative explanations. Specifically, he questioned the use of comparative samples from West Africa as a proxy group for sub-Saharan Africa, and the broad generalizations about the genetic origins of the entire geographical Egypt based on samples from a single site. Keita also highlighted that the authors seem to draw inferences on migrations primarily through their Bayesian statistical approach, rather than integrating a wider array of data into their explanations about population history. Archaeologist Danielle Candelora, also in 2022, noted several limitations of the 2017 study. These included new, untested sampling methods, small sample size, and problematic comparative data. She underscored a critical point. The findings regarding genome-wide data were largely based on only *3* mummies, while 3 ancient genomes are remarkable, extrapolating broad conclusions about a civilization spanning thousands of years and vast territories from such a small sample size warrants extreme caution. Further criticisms emerged in 2023. Stiebling and Helft acknowledged that the 2017 study represented the largest study on ancient Egyptians to date, but reiterated the point that the findings still derived from a small sample of mummies from *1 site in Middle Egypt, and exclusively from the New Kingdom and later periods. They rightly stated that this study could not represent earlier populations or Egyptians from Upper Egypt, who, as we discussed, were geographically closer to sub-Saharan populations and likely had different genetic histories. And finally, in 2023, Christopher Ehret, a distinguished historian specializing in African history, also argued that the conclusions of the 2017 study were based on insufficiently small sample sizes, and that the authors had a biased interpretation of the genetic data. Ehret particularly criticized the study for what he perceived as an assertion that there was no sub-Saharan component in the ancient Egyptian population, a nuance he felt was incorrectly conveyed. He cited other genetic evidence that had identified the Horn of Africa as a source of a specific genetic marker, the M35/215 Y chromosome lineage, for a significant population component that moved north from that region into Egypt and the Levant. So, what are we to make of all this? The 2017 study was a monumental achievement in ancient DNA research, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. It offered fascinating insights into the genetic makeup of a specific group of ancient Egyptians from a particular time and place. It suggested a strong genetic connection to the Near East throughout much of the Pharaonic and post-Pharaonic periods at that site, and a more recent increase in sub-Saharan African ancestry in modern Egyptians. However, the subsequent criticisms highlight the inherent complexities and sensitivities of using genetic data to reconstruct human history. Genetic studies, while incredibly powerful, are not a magic bullet that can answer all questions definitively. The interpretation of the data, the choice of comparative populations, the sample size, and the careful contextualization within archaeological, linguistic, and historical evidence are all crucial. What Abusir el-Meleq's DNA study ultimately tells us is not a simple, single story. Instead, it adds another layer of profound complexity to our understanding of ancient Egypt. It reminds us that ancient populations were not static entities. They were dynamic, constantly interacting, migrating, and admixing over millennia. The land of Egypt, situated at the crossroads of Africa, Asia, and Europe, was undoubtedly a place of immense cultural and genetic exchange. The ancient Egyptians of Abusir el-Meleq, through their silent genetic echoes, have contributed to a conversation that continues to unfold. They remind us that history is never truly settled, and that with every new discovery, every new technique, our understanding of the past deepens, becoming richer, more nuanced, and infinitely more human. As the embers of this segment glow, I invite you to ponder the intricate dance of human migration and connection that shaped the ancient world. The story of ancient Egypt, like the Nile itself, flowed from many sources, converging to create one of the most enduring and captivating civilizations the world has ever known. And the more we learn, the more we realize just how interconnected we all truly are. Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and keep vibing with history. Good night. And so, our expedition into the enigmatic world of Abusir el-Meleq draws to a close, leaving us with more questions than answers, and a profound appreciation for the continuous unfolding of history. From the diligent hands of early excavators to the intricate dance of ancient DNA, this journey reminds us that the past is never truly static. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the heart of ancient Egypt. If this narration resonated with you, please consider hitting that like button, leaving a comment with your thoughts, or sharing it with someone who might find peace and knowledge in these stories. And if you wish to continue exploring the forgotten chapters of our shared human story, be sure to follow for more. What ancient mysteries would you like to unravel next?